Indonesia is a key partner for South Korea. This is according to President Yoon as he met his Indonesian counterpart Joko Widodo in Jakarta, having clinched key MOUs for cooperation on EVs and batteries, among others. The South Korean leader continues his summit diplomacy now in India at the G20 Summit. North Korea claims it has built its first tactical nuclear attack submarine that is capable of firing nuclear missiles from underwater, with the launching ceremony observed by its leader Kim Jong-un. But the South Korean military has determined that the vessel is not fit for normal operations. South Korea's current account continued to remain in the black in July as imports dropped deeper than exports. It's September 8th, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Min. Over in Jakarta, the presidents of South Korea and Indonesia sat down on the margins of the ASEAN-related summits, where they agreed to strengthen their special strategic partnership by expanding security and economic cooperation. These include cooperation for fighter jets and EVs, among many. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae-eun-ji begins our coverage.
President Yoon Suk-yeol and his Indonesian counterpart Joko Widodo have agreed to bolster ties by boosting economic and security collaboration. During their summit in Jakarta on Friday, held on the sidelines of the ASEAN-related meetings, the two leaders signed a deal to build an ecosystem for the electric vehicle and battery industry in Indonesia, which has been emerging as an EV hub in the region.
올해 수교 50주년을 맞은 한국과 인도네시아는 정치, 경제, 사회, 문화 등 다방면에서 괄목할 만한 관계 발전을 이루어 왔습니다. 전기차, 배터리, 스마트 시티 등 미래 산업 분야에서 양국 간 협력을 계속 확대해 나가기를 기대합니다.
Seoul's top office said the two leaders also decided to strengthen defense and security cooperation to deepen their special strategic partnership. They vowed to successfully complete the joint project launched in 2015 to build an advanced supersonic fighter jet together by 2026. Indonesia has earlier agreed to shoulder about 20% of the $6.7 billion project, with South Korea taking care of the rest of the payment. It has imported a total of about $4.3 billion of Korean weapon systems, making it South Korea's largest defense partner among ASEAN nations. It was also the first nation to import South Korea's KT-1 and T-50 training aircraft, and the only country so far to have imported a Korean submarine. Meanwhile, they also signed a memorandum of understanding on halal food products to serve as a basis for related exports from South Korea. Also, as Indonesia aims to move its capital from Jakarta to Nusantara in East Kalimantan, the two leaders vowed to closely cooperate on having South Korean firms take part in the project. Indonesia plans to spend more than $30 billion to complete the relocation by 2045. Bae-eun-ji, Arirang News.
Wrapping up his four-day visit to Indonesia, where he attended a series of ASEAN-related summits, President Yoon's next stop is New Delhi, where he will engage in more diplomacy at the G20 Summit. Addressing North Korea's nuclear and missile threat is among his key agenda. Our correspondent Woo Soo-young tells us what to expect.
President Yoon will extend his multilateral diplomacy at the G20 Summit, calling for stronger action to curb North Korea's nuclear threat and joint efforts to strengthen solidarity on common global challenges. After wrapping up his four-day official visit to Indonesia on Friday afternoon, the South Korean leader heads to New Delhi for the two-day summit of world leaders. Upon his arrival, Yoon will meet with Korean expats in India before the first session on Saturday morning, where he will discuss South Korea's response to climate change and push for greater assistance for vulnerable countries to make the green transition. The leader will also discuss South Korea's growing role and contribution to tackling complex global challenges, highlighting the need for international norms on the ethical use of digital technology in particular. Also at the multilateral meeting, Yoon will continue to call on governments to fully implement United Nations sanctions on North Korea's nuclear and missile program. He will also call for global cooperation for peace in Ukraine. and the building of a rules-based maritime order in the South China Sea. The top office says Seoul's growing push for freedom, peace and prosperity, shown in Yoon's multilateral diplomacy, is rooted in the spirit of Camp David, declared by the leaders of South Korea, the US and Japan at their trilateral summit last month.
The force behind Korea, the US and Japan's trilateral collaboration has also inspired Seoul's responsible diplomacy, which pursues freedom, peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. Will endlessly strive to establish an international order that is rules-based and grounded on universal values.
Yoon's office says India is a key partner for South Korea's growing engagement in the Indo-Pacific, and that attending the G20 Summit in New Delhi provides a chance to enhance Seoul's status as a responsible player in the world order and deepen cooperation with various multilateral bodies, including the G7, BRICS and MIGTA. On the sidelines of the G20, Yoon will also hold a series of bilaterals with countries including Spain, Argentina and Mauritius, ramping up Seoul's economic diplomacy as well as support for South Korea's bid to host the 2030 World Expo in Busan City. In particular, Yoon's summit with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi falls upon the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. The two sides are expected to discuss ways to strengthen their special strategic partnership through greater trade and cooperation in areas like space, minerals and advanced technologies. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Jakarta.
North Korea claims it has launched its first tactical nuclear attack submarine, with the launching ceremony observed by its leader Kim Jong-un. However, the South Korean military says the vessel is not fit for normal operations. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Lee Dae-hyun explains.
North Korea has launched what it's calling its first operational tactical nuclear attack submarine ahead of the 75th founding anniversary. North Korea's state media on Friday reported that submarine number 841, named hero Kim Gun-ok after a North Korean historical figure, was assigned to the fleet that patrols the water between the Korean peninsula and Japan. But Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff said that the vessel appeared to be a modified Soviet-era Romeo-class submarine, which North Korea imported from China in the 1970s and started to produce domestically, and assessed that it's not capable of normal operation and that there is a possibility of exaggeration by the North. It also said that it will closely cooperate with Washington to maintain military readiness, as the two nations are planning to hold high-level talks on extended deterrence next week in Seoul to better counter the North's threats. A launch ceremony was held on Wednesday where Kim Jong-un said that the submarine would be one of the main underwater offensive means of the naval force of North Korea. Kim also highlighted that the launch of the vessel was to counter U.S. naval power while presenting his plan to strengthen the regime's navy by improving the rest of the submarine's weapon capabilities. One expert says the launch is to cover up their failure in economic measures.
The only thing that's currently working out well is the military development sector. So it's externally and internally showing off that its weapons production is proceeding smoothly, despite global pressure and sanctions.
Based on the photo released via North Korean media, the submarine appears to be equipped with a total of 10 launch tube hatches, which analysts say are most likely armed with ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. The Unification Ministry also deplored how the North wastes its resources by developing weapons while ignoring the difficulties of public welfare.
North Korea should realize that their provocations are meaningless, as Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo strengthen military readiness, and this is only going to make them vulnerable in security.
Meanwhile, the ministry said that there is a high possibility that the North would hold its military parade tonight. It said this would mark the third parade this year, which shows the need for the North to strengthen its internal solidarity. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
Today at the National Assembly, ministers and officials were questioned about pending societal issues, including a recent massive rally by teachers. But what seemed to be still taking center stage was once more heated debate over the Fukushima wastewater release. Our National Assembly correspondent Kim Jong-sil reports.
The final day of the four-day Q&A with ministers and government officials yet again included questions regarding the Fukushima wastewater discharge.
Even in the case of the discharge of Fukushima wastewater, the government didn't say a word about it and basically went along with it, right?
After rigorously reviewing the previous government's policies, we thought the former administration's policies were correct, so we were just following in its footsteps.
A ruling People Power Party lawmaker asked a follow-up question.
Please explain in detail why the foreign ministry did not file a complaint with the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea despite former President Moon Jae-in's instructions.
What was reviewed at the time was first that it was difficult to secure sufficient scientific evidence to prove the harmfulness or risks of Japan's plan. Secondly, the majority of our experts believed that the wastewater discharge would not have a significant impact on our waters. And thirdly, other countries such as the US, the UK, and France assessed the risk of Japan's plan as low, so there was a burden in publicizing the issue on the multinational stage.
Meanwhile, questions related to pending issues regarding education and society were also brought up. Education Minister Lee Ju-ho was asked why he thought teachers took to the streets, referring to the recent nationwide protest rallies that stemmed from the death of a young teacher who took her own life in July.
It seems that teacher classroom authority has been continuously downgraded for about a decade. Student rights, meanwhile, were emphasized too much, and there were nonsensical amounts of child abuse reports, making teachers anxious with regard to discipline. Malicious complaints from parents also made teachers' lives miserable.
The education minister also apologized for the tragedy and vowed to make changes in the education sector. Regarding issues relating to South Korea's notoriously low birth rate, Health Minister Cho Kyu-hong said expanding flexible working hours for a work-life balance was one of the Yoon administration's 5 core policies to tackle the problem. He added that significant spending has been set aside in next year's budget for this. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Korea's current account remained in the black for the 3rd month in a row in July as imports dropped deeper than exports. Park Gon-woo has the latest.
South Korea's current account was in the black in July for the 3rd consecutive month. According to preliminary data from the Bank of Korea on Friday, the country's current account for July saw a surplus of $3.58 billion as imports dropped deeper than exports. The current account has been in positive territory since May, although the latest figure was a slip of some $2.3 billion compared to the month before. The cumulative surplus from the beginning of the year to July amounts to some $6 billion, which is just a quarter of the figure from the same period in 2022. South Korea's goods balance saw a surplus for the 4th straight month in July, despite exports falling 14.8% on year, while imports were down 22.7% from the year before. In terms of exports, petroleum products and semiconductors both shrank on year, while autos and home appliances were the only categories that saw an increase during the same period. By region, outbound shipments saw a significant decrease in China and Southeast Asia. Imports saw an even greater drop in terms of both the volume and ratio due to fewer inbound raw material shipments on the back of lower energy prices.
We expect the decreasing trend to continue at a slower pace in August and September, and the increase in exports will be in the positive territory in the 4th quarter.
The central bank official added, Korea is moving toward economic improvement and not a slump, despite some concerns over recent import and export figures. The country's service balance saw a deficit once again in July, as the travel account decrease almost doubled on year. This was caused by a soar in overseas travel after COVID-19 measures were eased. In terms of direct investment, Korean investment in overseas markets and foreign investment in the Korean market rose, while foreign stock investment saw the highest jump since May 2022. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
President Yoon has removed Chung Min-young from his role as a commissioner on the Korea Communications Standards Commission, the nation's media regulatory agency. The decision, announced in a written statement on Friday, follows a request from the Ministry of Personnel Management, which uncovered a violation of the conflict of interest rules. Chung, a lawyer recommended by the opposition, previously represented TV broadcaster MBC but failed to report this before his appointment. He participated in more than 50 KCSC deliberations and decisions related to MBC. Chung has expressed regret for not adhering to the new commission rules requiring appointees to report such activities. With his dismissal, the commission will now consist of 4 commissioners recommended by the ruling party and 3 by the opposition. Korea successfully hosted a global smart city exhibition over the past 3 days, showcasing cutting-edge technologies. And in light of this occasion, our Shin Ha-young sat down with Seoul's Vice Minister for Infrastructure to learn about Korea's smart solution, including emergency response and public convenience.
Cities around the world have been striving to develop as smart cities, with the global smart city market forecast to reach a value of $870 billion by 2026. Amid this trend, the World Smart City Expo 2023, the largest smart city event in the Asia-Pacific region, kicked off on Wednesday in Goyang, Gyeonggi-do Province. Under the theme of Smarter Cities, Brighter Future, the event shares successful models of smart cities from around the world.
This year, for the first time, we held an event called the Mayor's Forum with policymakers in cities around the world. The purpose was to share experiences and solutions to issues related to the environment, transportation and the climate crisis that cities are facing.
Seoul's Vice Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, Kim Ho-jin, highlighted ICT technology as South Korea's strength in smart cities.
South Korea holds a significant advantage as a leading ICT powerhouse in the development of smart cities. Within pilot cities, there are AI-based CCTV systems connected to data centers for immediate emergency response. Additionally, there is a system that remotely monitors the health of patients and senior citizens, sending data to hospitals daily.
Among a variety of successful models, he wants to introduce a demand-responsive transit bus to the mayors visiting the expo from around the world.
I'd like to introduce demand-responsive transit buses that integrate public transportation and ICT. These buses operate flexibly based on passenger demand, adjusting their routes and stops. They are being well utilized in rural and remote areas, highlighting our country's strengths.
The government has designated Sejong City and the southern port city of Busan as national pilot smart cities and is exploring various integrated services within these cities through projects. Additionally, efforts are being made to promote Korean smart cities abroad.
We've been promoting and exporting South Korea's smart cities overseas through the so-called K-City Network program. It introduces Korean-style smart city models, technologies and solutions to cities around the world. We have already provided support to countries including Vietnam and Indonesia.
He added that through this year's expo, he hopes the Korean-style smart cities to be demonstrated in many different countries. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
It is time for our weekly arts and culture segment. That means we have our culture correspondent Song Yujin joining us in the studio. Hi, Yujin.
Happy Friday, Jongmin.
Happy Friday. What do you have for us today?
Well, Jongmin, so for this week, I visited the Dongdaemun area in Seoul, and when I mentioned this to people, interestingly, the most commonly asked question to me was, "You're going there to cover Seoul Fashion Week." So after I heard this question, I kind of wondered, is Dongdaemun now only known as the venue for Seoul Fashion Week? Because the Dongdaemun I know of, and I'm pretty sure you know of, has been hailed as something like a fashion mecca of Korea and also one of the most popular shopping shopping destinations here in country. And it turns out that the area has been going through a tough time over the past few years. So for this week, I delved into the significance of Dongdaemun in the fashion industry, its challenges, and how it's working to overcome them. It's a regular weekday afternoon, and designer Kim Min-seok is working to bring his creative ideas to life. Kim is the head designer for a women's apparel brand that his father started 30 years ago in Dongdaemun. The Dongdaemun area of Seoul has been the cornerstone of Korean fashion for more than 60 years. Packed with giant shopping malls, wholesale and retail stores, it's one of the few fashion hotspots in the world where everything, from design and production to retail, happens all in one place. Over the decades, Dongdaemun items have earned a reputation as being stylish, affordable, and good quality. However, the area has encountered a series of challenges since the 2010s.
It began when China decided to ban Korean culture as a response to that. While there was a bit of relief from local sales, domestic demand started dwindling with the emergence of online shopping malls hitting Dongdaemun's wholesale markets hard. To make matters worse, after COVID-19, around 70% of retail store spaces are now empty.
One effort to revitalize the Dongdaemun area is the DDF Fashion Show. Organized by the Seoul city government, the show took place for the first time this March, responding to merchants' calls for a platform to showcase their homegrown fashion brands and talented designers. For the second edition, 5 Dongdaemun-based brands were chosen, including Kim's, to introduce their latest collections. Some of these brands come from the oldest fashion markets in the area, like the Jeil-Pyeonghwa Market and Cheongpyeonghwa Market. For these brands, opportunities like this can serve as a jumping-off point for future success.
I look forward to more opportunities like this in the future. I hope these platforms can help raise awareness about wholesale brands like us and showcase our unique styles and trends.
It's our first time taking part in a live fashion show, so it's very nervous, but at the same time, I'm incredibly grateful for this opportunity. The stage is small at the moment, but if we keep pushing forward, I think it'll expand in the future.
This is how Dongdaemun is striving to make a comeback.
You know, organizing a fashion show seems to be a great idea to promote these brands.
I can't agree with you more, Jongmin, and I also want to point out that the Seoul city government is not only working to really support struggling merchants of Dongdaemun, but at the same time, it's nurturing fresh new talent in the fashion industry. So just before the DDF fashion show that you saw in my report was held on Wednesday afternoon, the 2-day High Seoul fashion show took place as well. Now, this event serves as a platform for up-and-coming young fashion designers based here in Seoul, and this time, a total of 7 brands were selected to showcase their latest creations.
And Eugene, you also mentioned the Seoul Fashion Week is taking place right now. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so the 2024 Spring-Summer Seoul Fashion Week is currently taking place at the Dongdaemun Design Plaza. It kicked off this Tuesday and it will continue until Saturday, which is tomorrow. And the event opened about a month earlier than last year. And Seoul City says that's because this is to really introduce next season's fashion trends even faster than the so-called Big Four fashion weeks in New York, Paris, Milan, and London. And this event, a total of 30 Korean brands are unveiling their upcoming spring-summer collections on the runway until tomorrow. And for those who can't be there in person, you can also watch live the fashion shows on the Seoul Fashion Week official YouTube channel, so don't miss it.
All right, our culture correspondent, Song Yudin, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again, I'm Lee Ji-hyun with the weather forecast. Despite the ongoing afternoon heat, I'm sure many are enjoying clear blue skies these days. We are already down to the third autumn season term, Baekno, which is today, so things will only get more pleasant from now. However, big temperature gaps between the lows and highs will continue across much of Korea tomorrow. We'll have ideal temperatures for sleep though, but parts of Jeju will be warmer, starting off the day at 23 degrees Celsius tomorrow morning. Highs will be similar to Friday, staying above seasonal norms. Seoul and Gwangju will see highs of 31 degrees Celsius, but Gwangju and nearby areas will have cloudier skies in the afternoon. The rest of the country will have sunny skies with high UV rays, and Jeju will be under stronger sunshine, so please have your sun gear ready. Overall, pleasant weekend weather is in the forecast with rain expected on Jeju and the south coast on Sunday night. And Jeju will see rain lingering into Monday afternoon. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And that is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.